Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Three Takeaways, my brief video reviews of books that have had an impact on me as a teacher at Florida State University, where I direct an applied public policy research center, as well as teach classes on social entrepreneurship, research methods, economic policy, economic development, and urban planning. Today I want to talk about a book by Dr. Lisa Wade, a sociologist at Occidental College, who has written American Hookup, The New Culture of Sex on Campus. This is an important book. In fact, I would argue that this may be one of the most important books you could read if you're trying to grapple with the new culture of campus, as well as a parent or a high school counselor. Lisa has done a great job of really trying to survey the landscape that faces freshmen and sophomores in particular as they land on campus, usually with very little or no supervision, and what happens, particularly in the content of the culture of the modern campus, or in many cases, students living off on their own at 18, 19, 20, and 21 years old. As an author of a book on campus sexual assault, this book, which came out either at the same time or a little bit after mine, really did put a lot of what I had experienced and knew into a real-world context. So here are my three takeaways. First, college isn't the same as it was when a lot of the parents of today's college students went to school, university or college. This was an important one as a father of students who are now out of college, but also something I understood a little bit when I was moved to Florida State in 2011, and I lived for a year and a half in a student apartment complex that was off campus. The world's very different. There are very few constraints. There are a lot of students are doing what they're supposed to be doing as teenagers. They're trying to explore and they're trying to find themselves and also experiment with different types of behavior, which in many cases have been taboo or completely off the table for discussion when they were growing up or in high school. And now they are into this world, which is very a libertine world. It's a free fall, and many of them may get caught. And I think Dr. Wade has done a great job of looking at what those behaviors are and how that affects their decisions, their ability to concentrate on their classes, as well as their overall socialization, which leads me to my second takeaway. Campus environments today are highly sexualized in ways that I think would surprise most parents, either because we've forgotten what it was like when we were in college, or simply because now, given the libertine approach of many colleges and campuses and the libertine environment in which students enter into, they can do whatever they want. And that actually puts them at significant risk, not just in terms of sexual assault, but also in forming identity and really finding their place within their social group. And this is a highly sexualized world in the sense that there are pecking orders that are established about who is attractive and who is not attractive, and that sets up the dynamic at parties. There's actually quite a bit of research that supports Dr. Wade's conclusions, independent of her book, although she goes through a lot of that research, that shows that these environments, these highly sexualized environments, actually have potentially significant negative impacts, and if we're not aware of them, then it's very hard for us to address them. My third takeaway is that we've set up an environment in which it's very hard, given the sexualized nature of campus environments and given the libertine world in which they step into, it's very hard for these students to transition out of college into a more professional world. They actually have found that it's harder to interact with people on a professional level because of the nature of college campus and these new patterns of behavior and the expectations of sex and exploitation and what it means to be on a first date, which is very, very different from when it was in the 70s and the 1980s. Sex is now a part of behavior, and it's not uncommon for the American hookup. You go out for a date and there's an expectation of sex, and if things run afoul of that expectation, that can have some downstream consequences. The problem is the professional world doesn't look that way, and for those students that carry that highly sexualized nature of the way we interact into the professional world, they run into trouble, both in terms of trying to connect in a meaningful way, in a professional way, but also in terms of adapting to the right behaviors and the right attitudes and accepting what is truly a professional work ethic, and then establishing that world, that professional world, in a healthy way. So I believe, in conclusion, I think Lisa Wade's book is a really, really great book. I think it really ought to be on the bookshelf of every parent, every high school counselor that has a college-bound child. And it's not so much to criticize what's going on at campus. It's more to understand the reality of what they are stepping into, and so that we can be prepared and develop ways to cope with that when our kids might run into trouble, or they might have trouble making the adjustments that are necessary. But so certainly American Hookup by Lisa Wade, one of my top books in terms of understanding campus culture. And as a professor who is working with students every day, I found it immensely helpful in helping me understand best ways to interact and to understand the context in which these students are coming to my classroom and make adjustments accordingly.